Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Western Flavors. Before we get into our new episode, let's recap the dramatic events from our last story. Ty's team, armed with a desperate new plan, initiated a brilliant counterattack. From the Vancouver hideout, Lou leaked a devastating file on Nathan's corporate crimes to an international journalist, creating a global media firestorm. The story succeeded in shattering Nathan's heroic public image, but it had a terrifying, unintended consequence. A furious and paranoid Nathan, now believing Amy was behind the leak, decided to accelerate his plans, ordering Scott and Peter to be moved to the mountain fortress, consolidating all his prisoners in one impenetrable location. If you're enjoying this new season, please take a second to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. Now today, as the world questions his integrity, a cornered Nathan Price turns on his own and a brutal witch hunt begins. The mountain fortress was no longer a sanctuary of a power. It was a pressure cooker. The clean, minimalist lines of the architecture now seemed cold and hostile. The atmosphere within its walls, which had once been one of a calm and arrogant confidence, was now thick with a new and corrosive paranoia. The king of the castle was wounded, and he had come to believe that the assassins were within his own court. Nathan Price stood in the center of his new and slightly less grand command center. The wreckage of his previous one had been cleared, but the ghost of his rage remained. He was flanked by Gracie, her face a mask of a cool and unwavering loyalty. Before them stood a line of 6 men, the senior security staff for his entire North American operation, all of them flown in for this emergency meeting. At their head was Kessler, his own face a pale and stoic mask that did little to hide the fear in his eyes. Nathan was not shouting. He was unnervingly calm. It was the predatory stillness of a snake, coiled and ready to strike. He let the silence stretch, forcing the men to sweat, to squirm under the weight of his cold and accusatory gaze.
There is a disease in this organization,
He said, his voice a low and quiet murmur that carried to every corner of the silent room.
a sickness of a disloyalty, a traitor who thought they could wound me, a fool who thought they could start a fire and not get burned. They were wrong. They have only succeeded in making me more focused.
He began to pace slowly in front of the line of terrified men, his movements the slow and deliberate circling of a predator.
The failure at the Cerberus facility was an embarrassment. This new attack, this leak to the media, is an act of a war, and it was an inside job. One of you or one of the people who report to you has betrayed me.
He stopped in front of Kessler, his eyes like 2 small chips of a black ice.
So we are going to cleanse the infection. You will initiate a full and complete internal investigation. I want every single employee, from the janitors at Price Tower to the guards at my black sites, subjected to a level 4 security review. I want polygraphs administered to everyone in a supervisory position. I want a full and forensic audit of all communications, personal and professional, for the last 6 months. I want this rat found, Kessler.
Kessler swallowed hard, a visible bobbing of his Adam's apple. Yes, sir.
And let me be perfectly clear about the consequences.
He turned his cold gaze upon the rest of the men.
Find me the source of this leak. And when you do, you will not fire them. You will not simply make them disappear. You will bring them to me. I will deal with the traitor myself. As for the rest of you, from this moment on, every single person in this organization is a suspect. Watch your colleagues, watch your friends. Report any unusual behavior, any sign of a dissent. Loyalty will be rewarded. Anything less will be considered treason.
He let the final and terrible word hang in the air. The message was clear. It was not just an investigation, it was a purge, a witch hunt.
You are dismissed. Begin immediately.
The men turned and filed out of the room, their faces a mixture of a fear and a grim and self-preservationist resolve. The poison of a mistrust had just been injected directly into the heart of Nathan's own organization. He had just turned his own people against each other. Gracie waited until the door had hissed shut before she spoke, her voice a low and cautionary note. This is a risky move, brother. You are creating chaos within our own ranks.
Chaos is a tool.
He said, turning to look out the massive window at the mountains.
Fear is a tool. For too long they have been sloppy because they were comfortable. Now, no one is comfortable. They will be too busy watching each other to have time to betray me again.
His logic was as twisted and as cold as the landscape outside. He had regained control not through a loyalty, but through a terror. The internal threat, he believed, was now being managed. It was time to deal with the external one. While Nathan Price was sowing the seeds of a paranoia and a discord within his own organization, the Heartland resistance was waiting in the tense and expectant quiet of the line shack. They had fired their shot, and now they were waiting to see where the pieces would land. They were watching the news reports, the financial fallout, the slow and satisfying public relations disaster that was unfolding for their enemy. But it was a distant and abstract kind of a victory. They had no idea if it was having any effect on the one thing that truly mattered, the safety of their friends. The buzz of the burner phone was a sudden and sharp intrusion. It was Marcus. For the first time, the sound of a message from their inside man was not just a source of a hope, but of a deep and profound anxiety. Shane snatched the phone, his fingers quickly unlocking the screen. He read the first, short and frantic text aloud. "It's Marcus." He says, "Witch hunt. Price has lost it. He started a full-blown internal investigation. Interrogations, polygraphs for everyone. They're tearing the place apart looking for a leak." A grim and terrible silence settled over the room. They had their victory, but their inside man, the terrified and desperate man they had recruited, was now in the direct line of fire. A second message came through. Shane's face went pale as he read it. He says, "It's not safe for me to communicate anymore. They're watching everyone. This is my last message. I'm destroying this phone. I'm sorry." Tim slammed his fist down on the table, a low and frustrated curse on his lips.
Damn it! So that's it? He's gone dark? We're blind again. We're right back where we started.
The loss of their only asset, of their only window into Nathan's world, was a catastrophic blow. The brief and hopeful sense of a momentum they had felt was gone, replaced by the familiar and bitter taste of a defeat. But then, a third and final message appeared on the screen, a final and desperate piece of an intelligence sent just seconds after the last. "Wait, there's one more." He read it, his own voice now a mixture of a disbelief and a dawning new excitement. He says, "He's moving them, all of them. Assets Alpha and Beta are being prepped for transport. Destination, the mountain fortress. It's happening tonight. He's putting all his eggs in one basket." The news was a double-edged sword. Their inside man was gone, but he had, with his final act, given them the greatest gift of all, a target.
So he's running scared. The media leak spooked him. He's pulling all his prisoners into his little castle where he can watch them himself.
He looked at Ty, a new and frustrated fire in his eyes.
But it doesn't do us any good. By the time we figure out a plan to get into that place, they'll have been locked away in there for a month. We're no closer than we were before.
Ty had been quiet, his mind a furious and high-speed engine of a calculation. He was processing the new variables, the witch hunt, the chaos inside Price's organization, the transport. He walked over to the map on the wall, a new and incredibly dangerous idea beginning to take shape.
"No, you're wrong. We're closer than we've ever been. He just gave us a gift."
He turned from the map to face them, his eyes shining with the light of a wild and audacious new plan.
"He thinks we're like him. He thinks we're sitting back, watching the news, celebrating our little media victory. He thinks we're focused on the corporate war. He's not thinking about us. Not really. He's thinking about the traitor in his own house. His entire security apparatus, his entire focus, is turned inward right now. They are tearing themselves apart, looking for ghosts."
He pointed to the map, his finger tracing a long and winding mountain highway.
"And while they're all busy watching each other, a two-vehicle convoy, a simple logistical transport, is going to be moving down a quiet and predictable route. He's moving them in a panic. It's a logistical move, not a tactical one. It is the single most vulnerable he will ever be."
Tim and Shane stared at him, the full and insane scope of his idea finally dawning on them.
"We're not going to assault the fortress,"
he said, his voice a low and steady declaration of Athok, their new and incredibly dangerous mission.
"We're going to hit the transport, while it's on the road."
While Ty and his team were staring at their map, planning a war with incomplete information, the war itself was creating casualties deep inside the enemy's own fortress. The Price Tower in downtown Calgary, once a sleek and confident monument to a corporate power, was now a viper's nest of a fear and a suspicion. Nathan's witch hunt had begun, and it was brutal. The scene shifted to a small and sterile interrogation room, buried deep in the sublevels of the tower. The room was white, windowless, and cold. A young and terrified security analyst named Leo sat at a steel table, a single harsh light overhead illuminating the sweat on his brow. He was a numbers guy, a man who lived his life in the clean and orderly world of a data and a spreadsheets. He was completely and utterly out of his depth. Across from him sat two men from Nathan's internal affairs unit. They were not policemen. They were something else, something colder. They didn't shout, they didn't threaten. Their voices were low and calm, and they dissected his life with a surgical and terrifying precision. You have an ex-wife, Leo, one with expensive tastes. The alimony payments are substantial. Our records show you are 2 months behind. You need money. I'm a loyal employee. I would never... Loyalty is a luxury, Leo. We're not interested in your feelings. We are interested in facts. And the fact is, your security clearance gave you access to the servers that were breached the night of the leak. The questions went on for an hour, a relentless and psychological assault. They knew every detail of his life, every secret, every small and shameful compromise. He was an open book to them, and they were turning the pages, one by one, looking for a single damning sentence. He was finally dismissed, told not to leave the city, not to talk to anyone. He walked back to his desk through an office that was no longer a place of a professional collaboration. It was a place of a pure terror. No one made eye contact. Everyone was a suspect. Everyone was a potential informant. As he walked, he saw another analyst, a woman he had worked with for 5 years, being escorted from her office by 2 grim-faced guards. She was weeping, silently, her face a mask of a pure and unadulterated fear. It was in that moment that Leo understood the new and terrible reality of his world. Loyalty to a paranoid tyrant like Nathan Price was not a shield. It was a death sentence. It didn't matter that he was innocent. He knew, with a certainty that was a cold, hard stone in his gut, that if they couldn't find the real traitor, they would simply invent one. And a quiet and unassuming analyst with a financial motive was the perfect and most convenient scapegoat. His only path to a survival, he realized, was not to prove his loyalty to Nathan. It was to find a new and more powerful protector. He sat down at his terminal, his hands shaking so badly he could barely control the mouse. He had to pretend to work, to act normal, but his mind was a frantic and high-speed calculation of a risk and a reward. The opportunity came, as it so often does, in the form of a simple and bureaucratic mistake. An urgent and high-priority data request flashed on his screen. It was from the logistics department, a request for a final confirmation of a transport manifest. And in the chaos of the witch hunt, with a half-dozen senior logistics officers currently being interrogated, the request had been accidentally routed to his lower-level security clearance. He opened the file, and his blood ran cold. The manifest was for Asset Alpha and Asset Beta. It contained the full and final details of their transport for that very night, vehicle numbers, guard assignments, and the exact and final route, complete with an updated and real-time security risk assessment. He looked around the quiet and terrified office. He saw the dark suits of the internal affairs men, watching from the end of the hall. He was being watched, but so was everyone. He made a split-second and life-altering decision. With a series of quick and practiced keystrokes that he prayed were not being monitored, he copied the file, not to an external drive, which would be too obvious, but to a tiny and encrypted partition on his own personal keychain drive, a drive that was disguised as a simple and decorative fob. The progress bar filled in a single and heart-stopping second. He closed the file, deleted the transfer log, and leaned back in his chair, his heart a frantic and wild drum against his ribs. He had it. He now possessed the single most valuable and most dangerous piece of information in Nathan Price's entire empire. The rest of the day was a blur of a pure and unadulterated terror. As he walked out of the office at the end of his shift, he could feel the eyes of the internal affairs team on his back. He did not run. He walked, a normal and unremarkable employee on his way home. But he was no longer an innocent man. He was a real traitor now. And he was holding a secret that could either get him killed by his current employer, or, if he could get it to the right people, it could be the one and only thing that might just save his life. Leo did not go home. Home was a place that was known, a place that was bugged, a place where they would be waiting for him. He was a man adrift, a ghost in his own city. He spent hours walking the cold and anonymous streets of downtown Calgary, the small and impossibly heavy keychain drive a burning coal in his pocket. He was a traitor, a man who held a secret that could bring down an empire, and he had absolutely no idea what to do with it. His mind was a frantic and terrified maze of dead ends. He couldn't go to the police. Price owned the local police. Their silence and their cooperation, bought and paid for years ago. He couldn't go to the mainstream Canadian media. Price owned them too. Their narratives and their loyalty, shaped by his immense advertising budgets and his powerful friends, and he had no way of contacting the one person who needed this information the most, the fugitive terrorist named Ty Borden. He was completely and utterly alone with his terrible and powerful secret. He finally found refuge in a small and dingy 24-hour internet cafe, a place that smelled of a burnt coffee and a quiet desperation. He paid cash for an hour on a public terminal in a dark and secluded corner. He had to get the information out. It was the only thing that might keep him alive. But to who? He began to scroll through the news articles about the Price scandal, the very scandal that had thrown his own orderly life into a chaos. He read the stories, the accusations, the carefully worded denials from Price's PR team, and then he saw it, an article from the Hudson local paper, an interview with some of the townsfolk, and in that article, a single and powerful quote from the one person in the entire sordid affair who seemed to be questioning the official narrative, Val Stanton. The article positioned her as Nathan's oldest and most powerful rival, the one person whose own empire was a threat to his, the one person who had, with a few carefully chosen and skeptical words, cast the first real stone of a doubt at Nathan's heroic facade. The enemy of my enemy. The thought was a sudden and brilliant flash of a desperate clarity. She was his only option. She was the only person with the power and the motive to use this information. His hands shaking, he logged into an encrypted and anonymous email service. He plugged in his keychain drive and attached the single and explosive file. He addressed the email not to a specific person, but to a general and publicly known contact address for Briar Ridge. But in the subject line, he typed 3 and very specific words: urgent and personal, V. Stanton. The body of the message was short and desperate. I am an employee of Price Industries. What they are saying about the Bartlett family is a lie. The attached is real. It is the transport schedule for 2 of his prisoners. Tonight, use it. He is a monster. He signed it with a single and appropriate word: a ghost. And then, with a final and heart-stopping click, he hit send. The scene shifted to the quiet and luxurious stable office at Briar Ridge. Val Stanton was working late, a single green-shaded lamp casting a pool of a warm light on her desk. The rest of the room was in a shadow. An email notification chimed on her laptop. She glanced at it, her expression one of an annoyance, but the subject line made her pause. She opened the email, her eyes narrowing in a suspicion. It could be a trap, a virus from Price, a clumsy attempt at a corporate espionage. She did not open the attachment. She forwarded the entire email without a word to her own personal and highly paid head of a cybersecurity, a man whose only job was to protect her digital empire from threats exactly like this. A few tense minutes later, her secure phone buzzed. It was her tech. Val, you need to see this. I've run it through every possible scan in a sandbox environment. It's clean, but the file itself, it's authentic. It's an internal and highly classified Price logistics manifest from today. If this is real, it's the whole damn playbook for a prisoner transport. Val took a deep breath, her own heart beginning to beat a little faster. She opened the file on her own secure computer, and there it was. The transport schedule, the guard rotations, the vehicle descriptions, the exact and final route for assets Alpha and Beta. She stared at the screen, a slow and calculating smile spreading across her face. The little ghost, whoever he was, had just handed her a gift, a weapon, the key to the entire bloody conflict, the key to eliminating her biggest and most dangerous new rival. She did not hesitate. She opened her own secure messaging app, the one that connected to the single untraceable burner phone she had given to Ty Borden. She attached the new file, and she typed a short and simple message. Your ghost just delivered a gift. Use it well. She hit send. The final shot is of the message, a silent and digital arrow, flying through the dark and empty night carrying the one single piece of an information that could save them all. The line shack was a powder keg of a tense and frustrated energy. Ty, Tim, and Shane had a plan, a desperate and audacious one, but it was a plan that was built on a foundation of a pure and unproven hope. They were waiting for a miracle, a sign, a single solitary piece of a good luck in a war that had so far offered them none. The chime from the secure laptop was a quiet and almost anticlimactic sound, but it landed in the silent room with the force of a thunderclap. They crowded around the small screen, their faces a mixture of a dread and a desperate hope. Shane read the message from Val aloud, his voice a low and reverent whisper. "Your ghost just delivered a gift. Use it well?" He clicked on the attachment. The file downloaded, and an official-looking Price Industries document filled the screen. It was a transport manifest, a complete and detailed plan for the movement of 2 high-priority assets. Just as they began to process the impossible gift they had just been given, the heavy wooden door of the line shack creaked open. Ty and Tim spun around, their hands instinctively reaching for the crude weapons they had stashed nearby. But the figures who stood silhouetted in the doorway were not the enemy. It was Ashley and Caleb. They had been summoned. The team was finally and truly reunited. The reunion was not one of a loud and joyous celebration. It was a quiet and grim acknowledgement of the work that was still to be done. Caleb looked stronger, the gaunt and haunted look in his eyes replaced by a cold and burning fire. He and Ty clasped hands, a powerful and unspoken understanding passing between the two men who were brothers in a way that went far beyond blood.
It's good to see you, man.
You too. Are you ready for this?
I was born ready.
The full and newly assembled team crowded around the small laptop screen. The mood was no longer one of a desperation, it was the electric and focused energy of a war council on the eve of a great battle. Shane read the details from the manifest, his voice a steady and professional rhythm. 2 armored transport vans, 4 escort vehicles, 2 in front and 2 in the back. A 16-man elite security detail. They're not messing around. The transport is scheduled to leave their separate facilities at 0200 hours. They'll rendezvous here and proceed as a single convoy to the fortress. Caleb leaned in, his own eyes scanning the technical details of the vehicles.
Those transport vans, they're heavy and they're slow, especially on an incline. And the comms they use, they're military grade, but they're short range. Designed for a convoy. They're easy to jam if you can get close enough.
Ashley nodded, confirming his assessment.
He's right. I can build a jammer that will create a dead zone about a quarter-mile wide. It'll knock out their vehicle-to-vehicle comms and any connection to their main command. It'll last for 10, maybe 15 minutes. But we'll have to be close, and we'll only get one shot at it.
Ty was not looking at the vehicle specs. He was looking at the route map. It was a long and winding path through the most remote and treacherous mountain highways in the province. A path designed for a secrecy, not for a speed. His finger traced the red line of the route, his mind a high-speed and tactical computer. He stopped at one particular section, a series of tight and vicious switchbacks, a place where the highway clung to the side of a mountain with a sheer 1,000-foot drop on the other side, a place notorious for rock slides and a bad weather.
Here,
He said, his voice a quiet and certain declaration. The others all leaned in closer.
Crow's Nest Pass. It's a natural bottleneck. They'll have to slow down to a crawl to get through this hairpin turn. There are no access roads for miles in either direction. There's no cell service up there. They will be completely and utterly isolated.
He looked up from the map, his gaze sweeping across the determined faces of his family, of his army. The desperate and fractured resistance was gone. In its place was a single and unified assault team, and they had their mission.
This is where we hit them. This is where we get Scott and Peter back. This is where we get our family back.
The episode ends on a final and powerful shot of the 5 of them, their faces illuminated by the pale and cold glow of the screen, a united and resolute force, ready to launch their most daring and most dangerous mission yet.